It is such a joy to see this church growing, blossoming beautifully. Every Sunday, a new light joins this beautiful vortex, the energy that we have created here, that the intention is for love, peace, and beauty. Thank you to Reverend Steve, our pastor, for creating this sacred space for us to gather here, the like-minded people, and to share our love, joy, and happiness with each other. So thank you, Steve, and thank you all for being here. Today my topic is about change, and how does change impact our growth. I looked up in the dictionary for the word change, in case if we don't know what it means. Change means to become different. Change also means to make someone or something different. Change means to become altogether something else. So, no matter how hard I looked for something different for the word meaning change, it all meant that transformation to becoming something different. People usually don't like the idea of change. They resist change because change requires shifting, changing their status quo into something different. People hesitate when it comes to change because they have attachment to their status quo. Their status quo is their comfort zone, and they have attachments to their comfort zone. Therefore, they resist change. And for instance, changing jobs, changing towns, changing homes, changing relationships, all these things are going to be part of our experience, and we should be open to it. Also, fear, excuse me, in most cases discourages people to change, the fear of the unknown. However, as human beings, we will experience change whether we like it or not. And the reason for that is we are designed to change, go through changes, and gain experiences to better ourselves and to reach our ultimate goals on both levels, physical and spiritual. Physical growth and spiritual growth go hand in hand. In reality, it is through our actions, interactions, we gain the spiritual growth. So all the experiences that we go through in our lives, whether it's good or bad, happy or sad, successful or not successful, it presents us the opportunity to change our perception, to expand our awareness, and to change our focus from being an individual to wholeness. In my book that was published recently, it's called The Divine Healing Energy, The Mystery of the Golden Light and How I Healed in Daytona Beach, I described the changes that I was going through during the period from 2007 to 2010. I was experiencing all kinds of changes, monumental changes during that period. Those changes were so intense and were happening simultaneously, were to a point where I didn't really have any choice to think or do anything but just go with the flow of the change. And during that period is where I experienced for the first time in my life, great losses, and I was introduced to pain and grief. I would call them my 3 years of darkness. It felt as if the hell broke loose on me. To describe them quickly for now is I lost my 2 bookstores. Following that, I lost my 2 houses. I ended up moving back to my parents' house with my 2 adult children. Within the same year, I lost both my parents, and I was also separated from my son for the first time in 26 years. And then I was introduced to a new town called Daytona Beach, where I had to cope with the changes and the challenges of being in a new place and adjusting to a new lifestyle. Is that enough or what? Was it easy? Of course not. At first I was puzzled. I couldn't understand what was happening, and then I was disappointed. Then I got angry. How could this happen to me? I didn't expect this. I had planned out my life that to me what was happening, I couldn't comprehend it. Then eventually I got sad and then hopeless. I became so weak emotionally and physically, so I was just hanging around, and I was just existing without any desire or anything to accomplish. And what actually helped me to survive was my response to getting along, accepting, and making adjustments to the demands of all the changes that was happening at that time. Despite all the adversities and the challenges that I went through, I saw the light at the end. In the midst of my pain and grief, I was introduced to the divine light. And it was in that light where I found comfort, I gained my strength, and most of all, I found inner peace. Then I understood the whole purpose of all the changes that were happening in my life. I also learned that with every change comes a reward. So my message in this book is, be flexible when your life is demanding change. Do not resist change. Instead, welcome it. This is a new experience for me. Usually when I am asked to talk, I select a subject, I gather my thoughts, I write them down, I do my research, I find quotes, statements that would support my topic. Today my reference is going to be my own book, so this is a new experience for me, and I'm going to try to do my best. I don't know how it's going to transform. So in my book, in the first 2-3 chapters, I'm describing all the changes, the monumental changes that I went through. So I'm going to read and speak as I go. Coming to Daytona Beach was never planned. I had never been to Florida. I had an established life in Fresno, California. However, due to the circumstances I was facing at that time, I was guided to go to Daytona Beach. Due to the global economic meltdown, I lost my 2 businesses One was a children's bookstore, retail, that catered to the school districts and teachers in the area. When the economy started getting back, the budget cuts started hitting the schools. There were hundreds and hundreds of teachers were being laid off from their positions. So the funds weren't there to purchase the extra curriculum books that the teachers bought it from my bookstore. So my revenues started declining drastically until the day came that I couldn't stay in business anymore. So I had no choice but just liquidating everything and shutting the business. And the other one was Metaphysical Bookstore. The economy again during I'm sure you all remember 2003, and it started just going nose down. No one hardly ever came to the bookstore. People were just sticking to their $1 that they had, not knowing where the economy was heading. So again, I couldn't keep up with the expenses that happened on a monthly basis, and my second bookstore came to an end too. Following that, I lost my 2 houses. We all know how the system works. When you fall behind in your mortgages, 2, maybe maximum the 3rd time, the house is not yours anymore. It goes to the banks. So all these things were things that I had never imagined it could happen to me. Imagine the hardship I went through undoing the 4 properties that I managed for 15 years. It is easier said than done. I had invested all my time, my life, and my money in my businesses and properties, thinking that since I am on top of everything, nothing will go wrong, as if I was so sure and guaranteed. I relied mainly on my well-established credit and the self-confidence I felt. I felt like I was unconquerable, to the point where people who knew me would wonder how I could manage all my business ventures by myself. To cut the story short, by the end of 2007, my life had turned completely upside down. And at the age of 47, a single mom, bankrupted, I found myself with my 2 children, grown-up adult children, at my parents' doorsteps. It felt as if I was on this long roller coaster ride that somehow landed at my parents' house. And here, not being recovered from my first nightmare, my second one was even worse. My parents' house had never been a harmonious place to live, though the house was big and spacious. However, there was constant tension, fights, arguments among my family members. Though my parents were married for 50 years, they never got along. They were both very strong, opinionated individuals that would clash all the time. So they always argued and fought. My brothers as well, they were constantly fighting and arguing. And me, on the other hand, I had completely different personality. I was calm and quiet. I avoided arguments. I often wondered what a weird family I have. How can I be born in this family? At one point, I convinced myself that maybe I could be switched at birth in the hospital. That's how different I was, and that's why I had kept my distance from my family. I loved my parents dearly. My brothers, I loved them so much. It's just that I couldn't be in the same room with them. And look at me, where I ended up, back in the same place, and I'm dealing with all this drama. And that was really shocking to me because finding myself at my parents' house, it was really disappointing for me. But I really had no choice at that time. I had nowhere to go, and being the loving parents they just welcomed me and my children. By the time I got to my parents' house, I was totally exhausted, drained, both physically and emotionally, with all the upheavals that I was dealing with. One thing that never changed at my parents' house was, again, the yelling and the screaming and the arguments. And having no other choice, I had to sit through it. All I did was I sat there quietly, and I was crying most of the time. Not being able to do anything. I'm not going to change them. Obviously, they haven't changed after so many years. They're not going to change now. But I just sat through. I accepted the situation I was in and went along with it. A few months later, while I was there, my father died unexpectedly, and we were all in shock. One day, there was this biggest fight going on in the family again, and my dad had a heart attack, and he died on the spot. And then all of a sudden, everyone, oh my God, what happened? And despite my dad's death, there was still tension in the house between my mother and my brothers, discussing businesses, finances, money, this and that. So my kids were really being affected by this whole situation, and I thought that it would be good for my son to just go away for a while and be with his father. He lived in Europe at that time. So within a week, my son left, and that was actually the first time that we were separated. We always worked together. My kids helped me around with my business. So that was a very sad experience to add on the top of all the other sadness. And my daughter at that time, she was finishing her bachelor's degree. It was her last semester. And as soon as she graduated, she started sending her resumes looking for a job. However, she wasn't getting any response. The job market got hit so bad in California that it was unbelievable. So then she started expanding her search to outside California. And she started sending her resumes and said that whoever calls me first for an interview, that's where I will go. And guess what? Her first call was from Daytona Beach, the University of Phoenix. As she was getting ready to go, she didn't want to leave me behind, and she insisted that I go with her. So that's how I ended up coming to Daytona Beach. Here I am now in a new town. There is a new beginning, a set of new changes and challenges. It's like this is happening so drastically. Within 2-3 months, something new. My coming to Daytona Beach was within less than a year to what was happening previously. So I come to Daytona Beach. It's a different town, different place. I don't really know anybody, and it's completely a place where it's the opposite where I grew up, and this is how I describe it to read it quickly. What a monumental change. From West Coast to East Coast. From farmland in Central Valley near Fresno, California, to Atlantic Ocean touristic shores in Daytona Beach, Florida. This was a totally different environment, people, and culture. I came from one extreme with diverse culture to a community with no diversity. It was just the total opposite. My daughter started going to work, and I was by myself pretty much all day until she came back. I found myself in a totally new place where I knew nobody. I left my entire legacy behind me as if nothing existed before. I often felt naked, stripped of not only my life, but my soul too. I felt like my dead body was moving around without any desire to do anything or think anything. I pretty much just existed. As I started getting used to the town, Daytona Beach, I started taking walks to the beach, to the ocean, and I would feel that I was healing, something was changing in me. The more I frequented the ocean, I started appreciating the healing power of the water and the ocean. And soon summer arrived and the humidity just invaded the Daytona. This was the beach coming. I was literally suffocating because I was not used to this weather. And in California, yes, it gets very hot, but there is no humidity. It's dry, which is bearable. But here, I was like, what is this? Where am I? I kept asking myself. As the saying goes, you will get used to after 40 days or something like that. So I started adapting to the environment, to the people that I really had nothing in common with. All my life I had interacted with intellectual, professional peoples, and here I wasn't really coming across, anyways, I wasn't in a position to even interact or do anything. I was just so engrossed with my horrible experiences that it didn't even allow me the chance to look or interact or say something. After the summer, as September was approaching, we decided to, now it's 5-6 months almost, we decided to get an apartment and stay here for a year. So we rented an apartment that was close to the shopping center called Bel Air Plaza. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was convenient where I could walk. I didn't drive at that time. I did not want to be in a car. And to me, walking, it was healing. I would feel better as I walked, and I didn't have to get involved with the traffic and all that. So my daughter and I, she was working. It was hectic for her too. She was working for $9 an hour with her bachelor's degree. But at that time, that was something common. Too many people were going through that experience, and she couldn't tolerate it at one point, and we often talked and discussed that maybe we should return back to Fresno. At least, my parents' house is there. But then we thought there isn't really much left there other than sad memories. And so we convinced ourselves to just stay here and cope with our life. So then it was around Thanksgiving. This is happening. I'm describing the entire year. And we had a Thanksgiving together. Of course, it was different than what we used to have back in my hometown. The whole week, we had guests, relatives, friends come over, and the fiesta was going on. We had fun, and here I was, my daughter and I, we had this little apartment. It was my first time living in an apartment, and we had few dishes on the table. It was actually, we had good feelings, happy memories, and sad memories, but at the end of the day, we were both thankful that we had a place of our own. And we were grateful for that. Following the Thanksgiving, I get a phone call from my brother in Fresno, informing me that Mom had a stroke and she was in the hospital in the emergency room, and she was on life support, and he asked me that I go, hurry and go. Again, I didn't have a choice at that time, though I didn't want to because I wasn't sure if I could handle the whole incident. I wasn't stable emotionally and physically. However, my daughter insisted that I go, and unfortunately, by the time I got there, my mom had passed over, so I didn't have the chance to tell her goodbye. For some reason, my mom's sudden departure, it just broke my heart. I would feel my heart aching with pain that I had never experienced in my entire life. So I took a huge down emotionally again. I just didn't care to live anymore. Now I was totally a hopeless case. There were nights where I couldn't even sleep and I was just crying. As I was grieving one day, I felt as if this pain really took me. I couldn't take it anymore. And I felt that like I died, but I think I really died. The pain took me, and all I can think of was I was taken to this brilliant light. It was golden light, vast golden light, and I just don't remember what happened after that. The next thing I remember is I became conscious, and but I was feeling different. My eyes were dry and my heart was not aching like before I had my experience with this light. And most of all, I felt peace that I had never experienced before. Altogether, it felt like I was in a different dimension, not of the one that I felt before having this experience with the golden light. And while I was thinking what happened, where I went, what was that, I couldn't figure out, but I felt like my mom and my dad were present in the room where I was. They were sitting in their recliner chairs, but I just couldn't see them. I just felt their energy. They were there. While I was trying to figure out all this, I heard my phone. It was my daughter calling. She was worried to death. She's been trying to reach me for the past, I think, 2-3 hours, and she couldn't get hold of me. There were like maybe 50 missed phone calls. Finally, I answered the phone, and she said that she was coming to Fresno to bring me back to Daytona Beach. After my experience with the golden light, I started changing drastically. As weeks were passing by, I would notice I was getting better and feeling lighter. I would remember how I felt sometimes for me to drag my body around, but I was feeling much lighter and freer. And most of all, I was feeling peaceful. Feeling peaceful was a new emotion for me, which I really didn't feel except when I meditated. Within a few weeks, I found myself totally changing. One day I woke up with happy feelings, truly happy for no reason. To the point where I started questioning myself, is this really me? I had started to notice those sad feelings were visiting me, the memories of my mom, and I noticed that those were visiting me less and less and were almost gone. Days would pass and I had not cried. It was amazing. What happened, I didn't know. Yes, I would remember my mom's memories, but my heart was not crying anymore. I would acknowledge the sadness, but I would let it go too. I felt liberated a little. I felt I was gaining my strength back, and I felt good about it. I hadn't felt this way since my life took a nosedive into the bottom. I would get glimpses of my strength I had before, and the strength would become stronger until I started regaining my strength, full strength back. So I got back into my meditation routine, and this time my meditation was completely different than what I used to do before. As soon as I would sit in my meditation, I would feel my body drifting, shifting higher, and I would go into trance, and in that trance the golden light appears again. And I say this because it is truly such a feeling that I cannot describe it. It's just I sense it, I feel it. And from that light, the golden healing energy starts coming and going through my entire body. And it happens very instantly. It is very instant. But by the time I'm done with the meditation, I feel good, I feel great, I feel renewed, refreshed, and energized. And most of all, I feel peace and bliss, which is, to me, it's like unimaginable. It was around my 50th birthday. Actually, April is where my birthday is, and when I used to walk around that Bel Air Plaza, there was a Starbucks there that I would stop by and get a cup of coffee. I love coffee. It's my favorite drink. And there was a group there that they met locally every day, and they would sit down and then talk, and they would watch who's new, who's not new, who's coming in, who's going. So apparently they would watch me as I would go in and out, and one day they invited me to join their circle, and they would discuss about their lives, the politics, the business, whatever is going on. So they became my friends, my first friends in Daytona Beach, which I really didn't know any of them. So it was my birthday when I walked, I went on my usual walk. I stopped by Starbucks, and they were all there wishing me happy birthday, Ashken, and they knew it was my birthday. So I took my coffee and I went out and I sat down. There was a couple at the next table. They were tourists, and they were having coffee. All of a sudden, this woman comes out of nowhere, a strange woman, and she is talking with them. And I don't know what she said. This woman got so mad, and she started yelling at this couple, and those couple were just totally terrified. And then she left, and they looked at me, the couple looked at me as I was sitting on the table next to them, and they shook their heads. What was that? And they were puzzled, and I said, you have no idea what I've seen here, this entire, on this chair. I've seen it all kinds of people, all kinds of people. And I said I could really write a book about it. And she looked at me and she said, you should write that book and make sure you include this incident that happened. I said, yeah, okay. And I was just, kidding with her. And then when it was time to leave, she came straight to me, the woman, and she said, you better write that book. And I went, oh, okay. And, I said, I will, but I really had no intention about writing a book. I don't know. To me, that book industry had ended. I had really didn't have any attachments. But as I went home that day and sat down, and all of a sudden, again, I was just naturally drifted to do meditation, and the golden light appeared again. It was the first time that I was reaching for my pen and a notepad, and this energy started rushing through my arm. I wasn't in front of the computer. I hand wrote this book first, and then I had to transfer it to the computer. and I would feel the energy rushing, and I was just writing. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't planning on what to say or what not to say. It just started happening, and the entire year that I spent in Daytona Beach, it showed up as a movie. I was watching and I was writing. So that's
Ashton,
how
I don't
this.
want to interrupt you, but the camera's about out of time, so if there's something important you want to
Okay.
get out on the video.
Yes. I am coming to that point, which is
You could shut off at
the
any minute.
rewards. That's okay. It's the two important points that I'm trying to make is about the rewards that we go through, the changes that we experience. And in my case, founding the inner peace was the best reward I've ever mastered in my life. And the next I talk about the infinite self, which is our spirit. And the reason why we go through the changes and the challenges in our lives, it is because our spirit wanting to be free. We are not physical beings, we are spiritual beings as well. And in reality, our essence is a spirit.